give us some bullet point about the voting. How can we people think about voting? Why it is shirk, and what's the
Okay, so voting itself, is just a mechanism to select, and that is by itself is not haram. Nobody will say that. If we vote, for example, do we want to have chicken? Do we want to have kebab? It's not haram. But if you're going to say, let's have a choice, a selection, should we worship Allah or should we worship shaitan? To have that election is not allowed. You cannot, in the first place, have a choice in the matter to say we'll put it to a vote, and whatever the majority decides we'll accept it. You should not even have that election in the first place. What about if somebody said, who should be our creator? David Cameron or Barack Obama? You didn't even ask about Allah. It's even worse. So now the same thing when people they say, we want to choose our legislators. Okay, and I'm not talking about a ruler. I'm talking about legislators. There's a big difference between a ruler and a legislator. Big difference between a judge and a legislator. Because people they try to use this term and they try to confuse people. They say, look, akhi, people legislate all the time. Muhammad legislated, the Sahaba legislated, Umar legislated. What are you talking about? He didn't do any of these. None of them legislated. Okay, they want to say that a fatwa by Ibn Abbas is legislation. They want to say that Umar al-Khattab make a decision as a Khalifa is legislation. It is not called legislation by any definition in any deen. Even in democracy, they don't call that legislation. Okay, let's look at it in another way. Look, in this country, okay, in the UK, when they have courts and judges, they judge by the law. They don't make the law. If the judge makes, a judgment outside of what the law permits him, it will never be accepted, and they will appeal it and they'll take it away, because he can only give judgment based upon what the law says. He judges between the two people based upon whatever the law says. But instead of looking to the law of Allah, he looks to the law of the parliament, whatever parliament says. The rulers, the ministers, when the Home Secretary or when the Prime Minister, they lay down a policy to implement the law that Parliament set. They cannot change the law themselves. They cannot say, this is going to be the new law of terrorism. They need Parliament to do that. If they were to do it, it would not be accepted. In this country I'm talking about. I'm not even talking about in the Sharia. This is the case because they don't call that law. Okay? When the council puts a parking permit in or parking machine, ticket machine, on the particular road, on a new road, they don't call that a law. They don't call that a law. They have laws about where they can put machines, where they cannot put machines, where they can have parking, where they can't put car parking. They have laws about that. And they can only operate within those laws. So the same thing in the Sharia, you have a Khalifa, he implements the law which is already legislated. And he only has a choice in matters which the Sharia, the law has given him a choice. The ruler, he makes decisions only in matters where there is a choice for him in the law, within the limits of the law. He cannot go outside. It's not called legislation. The same thing in the courts, in the Sharia, the mufti, the judge, the qadi, the ijtihad, the qiyas. These are done in matters in order to reach the hukm of Allah about a particular matter. But who actually made the laws? Allah SWT. And the law is fixed. And who makes the laws in the UK? The Parliament, not Allah. Why was Parliament established? Why did they introduce democracy in this country, in the UK? Your own history. Know it. They did it because the king and the church, they used to oppress the people in the UK. So they said we need a new system where the king cannot just make the laws whatever they want and oppress the poor people, the common people. And the church cannot just abuse whatever they want and say that it's the law of God and oppress the common people. So they said instead we need to have a parliament, take away the authority from the king, take away the authority from the church. It says separate church from state. Said God has no business in making the laws. We the common people will make the laws. The king has no authority to make the laws without consulting us. We will make the laws. So they established the House of Commons and the House of Lords in the Parliament, and that became the legislative body in the UK. It was from the beginning based upon the idea of giving the right of legislation to the people instead of the church or the king. to take God out of the equation. So in Islam we know that the one that you go to for that law, and you say we will implement whichever law that person or that parliament or that king or Allah, whatever they legislated will implement it, that is called ibadah, worship for them. You worship the one who made the laws. When you say we will judge in the courts, but whatever law is decided in that parliament or by Allah, that is called worship. So either you worship Allah or you worship the parliament. Because Allah Ta'ala says what? فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ. He said, by Allah, by your Lord, they are not believers until they seek judgment only with you in every matter that they differ. ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتُ يُسَلِّمُ تَسْلِيمًا. And they should have no hardship in their hearts whatsoever about your decision. And they submit to it fully. And Allah said, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. So whenever Allah and His Messenger have decided a matter, it's not right for any believing man or woman to have any choice in the matter whatsoever. You don't have a choice. The only thing you have a choice in is that which Allah already gave you a choice in. So the Prophet ﷺ is narrated that whenever Allah gave him a choice between two, he would choose the easier of the two. I mean, only when Allah gave you a choice can you make any choice, any decision about it at all. It's not for you to make a decision when Allah has legislated. So that is why these elections, they are shirk in Allah, because it is to choose who will be that legislator that we worship by ruling by their laws and judging by their laws and obeying their laws. We decide who's going to be. And this election, you're not even voting for David Cameron, you're not voting for Nick Clegg, you're not voting for Ed Miliband, you're not voting for the Green Party or the Labour Party. That's not what happens. In your local constituency, there will be 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever candidates. They are saying, I want to be a legislator in Parliament. I want to be part of the panel of legislators for this country, and you're the one you should select me to be one of them. That's what this election is about. So if you choose your local MP and say, I want him to be my representative in the House of Legislation, to legislate laws that the people will rule by and judge by and worship, then you commit shirk in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever your intention was behind it. Whatever your intention is, it doesn't make a difference. When somebody says, yeah, I know that that's what the ballot box paper says. I know that's what the MP is saying. I know what the election is about. But when I make that vote, my intention is that I'm just trying to save Muslims in Iraq. My intention is I'm just trying to put pressure on Israel. My intention is just that I'm not trying to help the Muslims get more Muslim schools. That intention is not going to make a difference. It's like the man who committed adultery. And he said, I know I did the act, but my intention was just to enter happiness into her heart. My intention was just because she was lonely, I want to give her good company. My intention was just to do a good deed. It was for me just to benefit, and for us to benefit from the time. That's what it was. It's not an excuse. It doesn't change the fact that he is a zani and she is a zania. And if you vote in the elections choosing a legislator instead of Allah, doesn't matter what good intention you had behind it, it doesn't change the fact that you're a mushrik. And the MP you vote for is mushrik and taghut. So beware, stay Muslim, don't vote. Inshallah.